A millionaire, a homeless little girl, and one chilling sentence that changed everything. She said, "Your wife is lying to you." And the next day, his whole world shattered. What started as a warning turned into heartbreak, but also gave him something he never expected: a daughter. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about truth, courage, and an unlikely bond that saved a life. Who was the girl? And how did she change everything? Watch till the end. You won't believe what happens. The millionaire was stepping out of his luxury hotel, gold watch glinting in the sunlight. His phone pressed to his ear, lost in his world of meetings and money, when a small, trembling voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Sir, your wife is lying to you." He stopped mid-step. The voice didn't belong to any hotel staff or paparazzi. Slowly, he turned his head and saw her, a girl, barely 12. Dirty clothes hung from her small frame like forgotten rags. Her hair was matted, her hands dusty, her lips dry. But her eyes, those dark, focused eyes, were unforgettable. They weren't filled with fear or desperation. They were filled with urgency and something deeper: truth. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. She took a hesitant step forward, holding her ground. "I know your wife, and she's not who you think she is." David Carter, one of the city's youngest millionaires, a man who built his empire from scratch, was used to lies, fake deals, gold diggers. But this, a homeless child claiming to know his wife, he almost chuckled. "Almost. This some kind of joke? You want money?" he said, reaching for his wallet. But the girl didn't flinch. She didn't beg. Instead, she said his wife's name: "Emily. And not just that, she wears black orchid perfume. She's allergic to shrimp. Your dog's name is Milo. And last night, you both had dinner at Franco's." David froze. Every word she said hit him like a brick. How could this girl know those things? Franco's wasn't a place you just walked into. It was reservation only, high security, and discreet. The kind of place where no one bothered you, unless they were watching you. His heart began to pound. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't coincidence. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "Who are you?" he asked, voice quieter now. "I'm someone who listens when people think no one's watching," she said softly. "And I'm telling you, sir, if you want the truth, go to the alley behind Fifth Street tonight at 10 p.m. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. David stood there, speechless. His world, once perfect, had just been cracked wide open by a child. And somehow, he knew, nothing was ever going to be the same again. "Please, I'm not asking for money," the girl said again, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes shimmered with something deeper than fear: truth. "But if you go to the alley behind Fifth Street at 10 p.m. tonight, you'll see it for yourself." David Carter stared at her, torn between logic and instinct. Every part of him wanted to dismiss her as some street kid with a wild imagination. But something in her tone, something in the way she said his wife's name earlier, it chilled him. He didn't reply. He just turned and walked away, trying to convince himself she was just a clever liar. But as the day wore on, he couldn't shake her words. "You'll see it for yourself." They echoed in his head like a song he couldn't stop hearing. Emily had been different lately, colder, more distant. She came home late, avoided eye contact, and often clutched her phone like it held all her secrets. But David had chalked it up to stress. Business. Life. Now he wasn't so sure. At 9:45 p.m., curiosity and anxiety twisted in his stomach. Against his better judgment, he climbed into his black SUV and drove to Fifth Street, a quiet, dimly lit stretch of old warehouses and empty lots. The kind of place no millionaire had any business being. He parked a few blocks away, turned off the lights, and waited in silence. Minutes passed. The city's hum faded. Then at exactly 10:07, he saw her. Emily. She walked into the alley, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, nothing like the high-end fashion she usually flaunted. Her steps were quick, deliberate, nervous, even. David sat forward, breath caught in his throat. A man emerged from the shadows. Young, smirking. They spoke briefly, then laughed. And then, right there, under the dull flicker of a street lamp, they kissed. Not a peck. Intimate, comfortable, familiar. David's world cracked. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on the deepest level. All the dinners, all the I love yous, all the little lies, they suddenly made sense. The girl had been telling the truth. A complete stranger, living on the streets, had cared enough to warn him when the one he loved most had been lying all along. And in that moment, David knew his life would never be the same again. The next morning, David barely touched his coffee. He hadn't slept. Images of Emily with that man played on a loop in his mind. The kiss, the lies, the secret meetings. But even louder than that was the voice of the girl, the one who had told him the truth. He couldn't ignore it. He owed her something, an explanation, a thank you, something. He got into his car and began driving, retracing the streets where he had last seen her. He stopped by shelters, soup kitchens, parks, subway stations, anywhere a homeless child might find a corner of safety. Hours passed. Finally, near the downtown subway entrance, he spotted her, thin frame, oversized coat, handing out flyers for a nearby shelter. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She was helping. He approached gently. "You were right," David said quietly. She looked up, startled. Then her expression softened. "You went." "I saw everything." There was a silence. Heavy. Real. "But how did you know?" he asked, his voice laced with a mix of confusion and gratitude. The girl hesitated. She looked down at the crumpled flyer in her hand. "Emily used to come to the shelter sometimes," she began. She told everyone she was volunteering, smiling, being kind, but she wasn't there to help. David's brows furrowed. She was meeting someone. The man you saw. He'd wait in the alley nearby. She thought no one was watching. She took a shaky breath, as if speaking this aloud cost her something. "She used to talk about you, laugh about how easy it was to live two lives. She said rich men are too blind to notice." David's hands balled into fists, not from rage, but from heartbreak. "She thought no one was listening," she added. "But I was." "Why?" David asked. "Why tell me? Why not just move on?" The girl swallowed hard. "My mom was like you," she whispered. "Kind, strong, had money, a business, a big heart, but she trusted the wrong man. He cheated, and she blamed herself until she died of heartbreak." David stared at her, stunned. "I didn't want anyone else to go through that. That's all." He knelt down, his voice softer than it had ever been. "What's your name?" The girl looked at him, those deep, knowing eyes shimmering. "Lila," she whispered. And in that moment, David knew this girl had saved him in more ways than one. David went home that night, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The luxury, the silence, the walls, they all felt cold, lifeless, hollow. He confronted Emily when she walked in, still wearing the same hoodie from the night before. There was no need for drama. The evidence spoke for itself. She didn't deny it. In fact, she didn't even cry. She just shrugged and muttered, "I was tired pretending." Then she packed a few things and walked out without a single apology. No goodbye. No regret. David stood in the doorway, staring into the hallway as the elevator doors closed. The woman he once planned a lifetime with was gone. But strangely, it wasn't her betrayal that occupied his mind the most. It was Lila, that small girl with big eyes and a bigger heart. She didn't owe him anything, yet she'd spoken up. She had saved him from a lifetime of lies, just because it was the right thing to do. The next morning, David drove back to the shelter with a quiet determination. As soon as he walked in, one of the staff members recognized him and smiled. "I'm looking for Lila," he said. She's in the back reading, the staff replied. She's always reading. That girl's got a mind like a sponge. David looked toward the hallway. I want to help her. The staff member's smile faded into something more thoughtful. She could use it. They explained everything. Lila's mother had died 2 years ago from cancer. Her father had vanished long before that, angry, violent, and addicted. Lila had been surviving by bouncing between shelters, keeping her head down and helping where she could. She didn't steal. She didn't lie. She just survived. She's different, the staff member said. She reads constantly, speaks like someone twice her age. It's like the world hurt her early, but she chose to stay kind. David felt his throat tighten. She saved me, he said quietly. I want to return the favor. That very week, David began the legal process to adopt Lila. It wasn't easy. Paperwork, interviews, home inspections. But he had the means. More importantly, he had the will. For once, all the money in the world wasn't about power or comfort. It was about giving a deserving child a life she never had. And in doing so, David began healing, too. 6 months later, the once forgotten girl from the street sat front and center in a grand auditorium, wearing a neatly pressed school uniform, her hair tied in a clean braid, and a golden certificate clutched tightly in her hand. Her name, Lila Carter, had just been announced with thunderous applause. She had been honored with the city's Young Hero Award, given to children who displayed extraordinary courage and integrity. The mayor himself handed it to her, saying sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They wear torn jackets and carry truth in their voices. In the crowd sat people from all corners of her journey, shelter volunteers, her new teachers, social workers, and beside her, holding her hand, was David, no longer broken, no longer blind, but now something more, a father. Reporters gathered outside the auditorium doors, hungry for the story behind the girl who changed a millionaire's life. After the ceremony, one journalist pushed forward and asked a question everyone wanted to know. Mr. Carter, why adopt a girl from the street? You could have helped in so many ways. Why this? David's eyes glistened as he looked down at Lila, who clutched his hand tighter. He turned to the cameras and replied, because when I was blind to the truth, she gave me sight. When I was about to fall, she held me up. She may be young and once homeless, but she's richer in heart than most millionaires I know, including the old version of me. The room fell silent. Then came a standing ovation. Reporters lowered their cameras. Shelter volunteers wiped their tears. And Lila, she simply looked up at David, eyes full of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me. David smiled, tears finally slipping down his cheek. No, he said. Thank you for saving me. As the auditorium lights dimmed, the applause echoing softly behind them, David and Lila stood hand in hand, not as a millionaire and a homeless girl, but as father and daughter. Their story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It wasn't about riches or lies. It had become something much more powerful, a story of trust, of second chances, and of an unexpected family born from one brave moment of honesty. And in that truth, they both found their home. Sometimes, the people we ignore are the ones who see the truth most clearly. David lost a wife, but found a daughter. And Lila, she gained a family and gave the world a lesson in courage. Sparkles, trust, kindness, honesty. That's what truly makes someone rich. Pushpin if this story touched your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Speech Balloon, tell us in the comments, what would you have done in David's place? Bellhop Bell, hit the bell icon.